So this is just a test to see if this system is going to work. I'm going to be toggling between Windows and Mac just so I can show the difference between the certain functions on Windows and Mac that Frederick mightn't be that familiar with. So the plan will be, I've actually imported a memo of the list I sent Frederick. And the plan will be to go through these, first of all, 20 items. Now he's already had this list, but I'm going to go through them and prioritize them in terms of their importance to researchers and to clients based on anecdotally on our own 25 years of training and the levels of inquiries we get through support and training on all of these. But they're all missing. That's the first point to make. So the compound and group queries, probably in terms of its significance to the clients we deal with, probably not that significant. I think the group query is a very useful query. We do teach it in Windows. Obviously we can't on the Mac. And the compound query is a brilliant query, but it's not available. Neither of those are available at all. Now, I would just make one point about the compound query because, in fact, any of these things, sometimes the metrics sometimes what QSR and then laterally Lumivero use to evaluate whether they should invest energy in upgrading something is metrics. It's how often it was used. But the compound query wouldn't be used very often because it hasn't changed since version 7 and it's not an easy query to use. So you won't see big metrics of people using it and trying to use it. However, we explain it in one of our intermediate level workshops. We explain and demonstrate compound queries and they absolutely love the idea. So it's just that the query hasn't changed and it's not user friendly. So maybe you could lead the charge on that one by putting compound queries that are usable into the Mac. But certainly the group queries little wizard is a very useful little one, and would be no harm to have that. Lower in priority for both of those. Now the see also links is a different beast altogether because it is a serious query that is used substantially. Now if I go back into Windows here for a second, and I go to notes, see also links. So here's the list of all the links that have been made between items. Now the way we demonstrate this in our workshops is through literature, because a lot of people use NVivo for literature review and then they do their interviews in NVivo. And what you're trying to do in an interview is connect the dots between, say, an abstract or something in here and something in an interview. So, either something that Barbara says in her interview, which I can now connect at the top or bottom level to theory. So, like Barbara says something here, I can right click on it and say, links, see also link new. And I can go and select the item, so it's in literature. And I can select it. And what happens is it's highlighted in pink. The article is at the bottom of the page. So as I'm reading through Barbara, I'm seeing all the theory and theorists that this interview is hitting. And as I'm reading through the literature, I'm seeing all of the connections. If I wanted to let's say, do it the other way around, something Barbara said to the theory, I can do it the other way as well. Even though that's a PDF, I can paste it as a see also link. So now as I'm reading through the literature, I can see all of the links that this paper is making to my own interviews. And as I'm reading through my interviews, I'm seeing the connections that it's making with primary or with secondary data, and all of it stored in here in the notes area. So that is a really useful tool that has never been in the Mac and would be used extensively, certainly among our clients. And once we point people out, they find that a very useful tool to use. Sometimes they don't understand it. If you bring in a file that's hidden, in other words, if I generate my project file in Windows and I put in see also links, and I import, then I open it up and convert that to Mac, the links are all deleted. So I can't even do that. Annotations, I would say, in audios, videos, pictures and data sets is critical. Now the whole functionality of media files is terrible. Frederick, you mentioned this at the meeting yesterday, so I know you're aware of this, but it is awful, and you can't annotate any of them. Now annotations are a core tool used by researchers. Like if you look at literature going back into the 40s, before there was ever technology, those books only mention three things: indexing, annotating and memoing. Indexing is coding, just organizing the data. Annotations are a core value that underpin the entire paradigm, because it's the researcher's job, the qualitative researcher's job, to put missing context back, and there is always missing context. So sarcasm, irony, humour, field notes, observations, coding assumptions, thoughts and ideas. Look at the first stage of a very popular method, thematic analysis. We've done presentations for Lumivero on how to do thematic analysis in NVivo. The first stage is familiarization, writing familiarization notes. Now what if you're using media files on a Mac? You can't even do the first stage of Brown and Clark. And an IPA, initial coding and noting, so the list goes on. So it's a really important function that's completely missing in the Mac version. I probably don't need to show it to you in Windows. You're probably already familiar with it in Windows, but again, these are all stored here and I can drill down on them. So Barbara has one, and if I double click on it, it'll take me into Barbara and show me and open it up, and I can see the context. And you know, NVivo's, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but NVivo is called after context. It actually literally means working on live tissue. It's a Latin medical term, but figuratively it means seeing something as part of a living organism affected by the body at large. In other words, context is everything in the qualitative paradigm. And what are we doing when we're encoding data? We're taking things out of context. We're in the soundbite business. But when I add an annotation to Barbara's interview and then I code that passage of text, the note goes with it into the code. So I never lose that contextual factor. I mean, researchers are going to get brownie points just for having a screenshot of that in their PhD or doctorate, because it's a core value that underpins the paradigm, and it's completely missing on the Mac. Not in terms of transcripts. It actually does a better job than Windows on transcripts. You know, the text it comes up like a little pop-up, but definitely missing on media files. And of course, I know we discussed yesterday that media files generally are clunky to code, very difficult to work with, very poor quality. Dynamic sets are missing completely. Now they would be low priority, in the sense that we don't work with that many clients who actually use them. It would be certain longitudinal studies where you're bringing in several sets of data at different time points. You've already identified all your sets and groups, so you just want to add them automatically. So that's fine. The dynamic set wouldn't be high priority for me on the Mac. It is very useful, but I think it wouldn't be that significant. But the framework matrix is completely missing, and that's a whole tool given over on the Windows side. Complete tool given over. What am I doing here? Sorry, too many things open. So on the framework matrix, really useful tool. It's Ritchie and Spencer 1994 framework analysis. It's widely used. They gave their source code years ago to QSR so that they could they originally had their own software. Ritchie and Spencer, they're two London-based academics who came up with this method, and the framework is it's just one step of it, but it's an important step. And they gave the source code to QSR, who built it in years ago into framework analysis. And I've published papers myself on using framework analysis with NVivo. So missing altogether on the Mac, so nothing to show there other than having a moan about it, but we can't show it to you. I'd say that's a high priority. Sentiment coding, no. I mean, it doesn't work very well in Windows anyway, to be honest with you. Run it on the in Windows on the tutorial on this project, the environmental changes, and the first line you're going to get for very negative is, "He's not really my uncle, but a friend who I call an uncle. I just help him set his flounder nets," and things like that. That's very negative, because the algorithm doesn't understand that what he's talking about is a fish, and he also says "not really." So again, it's about context. So I don't find it useful, to be honest with you. I do find a lot of people will code for sentiment. That requires a judgment and a human. The automated sentiment coding, for me, it's pretty useless in Windows and wouldn't be a priority for me at all on the Mac either. Relationships don't exist at all on the Mac. They wouldn't be used hugely. They'd be a low priority for me, insofar as people doing social network analysis and certain types of those kind of methods might use them, but they would be very much in a minority. A lot of people don't use them at all. Social network analysis, same thing. It's a very specialized area, so it'd be nice to have it. Nice to have all of them, but that would be a low priority for me as well. The cluster analysis, though, isn't. That is used, and people like it when we show it in the workshop. And you can't do it on the Mac, but you're familiar with it, and I'm sure you can. I won't bother showing it to you. It's really just want to show you on Windows the things that are different on the Mac and Windows, where they do share some function. Most of the ones we're talking about here just don't exist at all on the Mac. So that's the cluster analysis, and then you have project maps, but one of them is missing. The project map, there's only 2 on Mac, and there's 3 in Windows. And the project map is useful because if you want to show your coding hierarchy, you drag in a parent and then you drag in a child code, it connects them up automatically. And even more important on the Mac is, or in Windows should I say, is that you can look at the data behind it. I'm just going to go down here. It's stored under visualizations in Windows, maps. So if I take a new project map, I'll just call it test, and I drag some coding in, I'll go up to my codes, I just go to the top level ones, and I drag in attitudes, and then I drag in, let's say, the child codes. You see, unlike the concept map on the Mac, which is available but doesn't connect things up automatically, then I can use a nice template there to show a flowchart look. I can manually manipulate it, I can have a hierarchical look, but I can do one other thing which makes it important. I can right click on it and say show me the data behind that, and there's all the data that is behind that particular set of codes, and there's it's a Teams memo. And if I look at, say, negative, and I say what's behind that, there's all the negative comments, all the sources of negative comments. There's all the files. They're coming from interviews, news articles, social media, and surveys, all there. And I can put this out as a high resolution image, and I can show the relationship, let's say, between theory, and if I drag something in, it connects it up. Or even people. If I'm doing IPA, a lot of case studies, you would do in case and cross case analysis. So I can drag in people, and I've gone to Barbara, and look at her coding and where she's gone. So I can make this as complicated or as simple as I want, and it's all very easy to do, except you can't do it on a Mac. That would be a high priority for me. The entire suite of reports is missing. Now, to be honest, reports in Windows haven't been looked at since version 7. So they're pretty archaic in there as well. The suite that comes preloaded with the software are reasonably good and easy to use. You can customize reports. We have videos on YouTube and all that about customizing reports. However, it's using an old thing like Crystal Reports. It's very difficult to use. It's not user friendly at all. So some kind of a WYSIWYG drag and drop would be really useful, and you could probably get ahead of the curve on Windows there, because they are important. What we get asked a lot about, emails all the time. How do I send a report to my supervisor? But we can show them in Windows. We can't show them on the Mac. Or we have to do workarounds to extract the data. So that'll be a high priority for me, to have some kind of reporting mechanism, and preferably a better one, a report customizer or builder, than the one in Windows, which is long overdue an overhaul. No 3D graphics. They're not the graphics. Lumivero won't be going to the graphics Oscars any day soon. They're very limited, and the customization of them is even extremely limited in Windows. But at least there is a 3D graphic or a couple of templates in there you can use. There's nothing on the Mac, and people like graphics. It's one of the selling points of the software. That to be high priority for me, both reports and graphics. This is a simple one, but it's very annoying. There's no option to open an existing project. Well, there is an option, but it's not obvious. So if I go into Windows here for a second, I'm just going to close this and go back to the welcome screen for a minute just to show you this. I'll save my changes. When I close this project, because a lot of people have trouble with the recent links, because if they move the file or rename the file, they click on the link and they're told there's no file, and then they're emailing us in a panic saying we've lost our data. So they don't really get it a lot of the time with recent projects. You must remember, there's probably a lot of assumptions made by engineers in places like Lumivero about academic standards of computer literacy, because it's pretty low, particularly in the older generation, which tends to be the more senior ones. But this easy option here, they can just say open other project, and they're back. They can just browse for their project, and they can find their project, and away they go. However, in NVivo, when you do the same thing, I just do file close here. We're getting an error, by the way, on version 15 every time we try to save. Watch what happens now when I say save this. This isn't on the list, by the way. But if I say save this, I get this. Couldn't be saved. Open and close the document again. If you want to use the last save version. Now, isn't that pretty poor? Imagine the heart attacks that generates. But I'm going to close it. It doesn't matter whether it's saved or not anyway. I'm not really worried about that. So I'm just going to say don't save. And when I go back and I launch the welcome screen, which, by the way, when you click on it here, doesn't launch. I'm going to quit NVivo. These are the really irritating things. So quit NVivo, because that's what I have to do to get the welcome screen to come back up again. That was on 14 and 15. Maybe I'm missing something here, but every time I click on that, nothing happens. It'll come up now because I've shut the software. Now show me here where I can open an existing project. That open doesn't refer, it refers to whatever projects are in the recent list, or the samples, or I can create a new one. But where's the option to open an existing one? It's not there. So we get a lot of emails about this, and we have to tell people they have to go up here to File, Open Project, instead of having a simple hyperlink in there for that, and then they can browse for their project and they can open their project. So that's pretty ludicrous, and we have raised this multiple times. We've never had anything done about it. So I'll go back into my sample project there. I'll open that up again. So that's another one. It's I would say I know you told me not to make any assumptions about something being easy or hard, but I can't imagine how that would be hard. But as you see, all it does is open up Finder or open up File Explorer on Windows. So that would be really helpful. So I'm going to go back here to my memos. Missing features. We just open that up. So we got as far as open an existing project. low, I'd say high priority probably. It makes life a little easier at the very start. Option to use synonym specialist or generalization in text searches. This one is a biggie in terms of that they both have text searches, but they're vastly different between Windows and Mac. So 14 and 15 are both related to text searching and the differences between the two, and they're both high priority because they're used extensively. They certainly come up a lot in our web shop, in our workshops and training resources and everything else. They come in as questions, so people do want to search. And the 14 and 15 are just two aspects of the search that are different on the Mac, and seriously more clunky to do on the Mac. So I'm going to run a text search. I'm going to run a text search and update a code in Windows, and then I'm going to run the same search on a Mac, and you'll see what I'm talking about in terms of the difference. So in Windows, if I want to make a new text search, I'm just going to search for the word fish or something. I can stem it. I can do that. Now there's several more options here. I only have exact match or stem on the Mac. I can use synonyms. I can use specializations or generalizations here. So that's the first thing that's different. There's also more limited operators here. So and or not you have, but required, prohibited, fuzzy, near. You have a near search, I think, on the Mac, but from memory, and you have a wildcard, but there are fewer of them, and you certainly don't have anything that's in a compound query like preceding or surrounding in a text search element of a compound query. So we run the query and we get our preview, and let's say I've found 200 references here from all these different sources. Now on Windows, I decide, look, I want context on this, so I'm going to put a broad context on them. So if I look in the references here, it'll take a sec to load because there's 200 of them. But then people are using searches on these kind of volumes of data because they're doing literature reviews and policy documents, much bigger than interview data sets. But now I can just spread that for context and run it, and now I get it in a paragraph for a certain number of words on either side. I have an array of choices. In fact, I have all of those: narrow, broad, entire file, and I can even custom and go in and I can do it for spreadsheets, take the surrounding cell rather than the surrounding paragraph and all of that. So now I have it. I want to update a code, so I save my results. I could want to make a new code, but I'm not going to. I'm going to update an existing one. I don't have this option on the Mac. I can only make a new one on the Mac, and I can't spread the fines on the Mac. So the way we did there, to get the paragraph. So I'm just going to stick it into, let's see, the economy. I think there's something about fishing in there. Fishing and agriculture. I'll stick it in there. So I say OK to that, and that code has now updated with those 200 references. And it's great because if I already have references in there, you can't duplicate content in a code. So it will have only add the ones that I didn't already have if I did do some manual coding. Now that's completely different on a Mac. So I'll go back into the Mac now and run the same thing. You'll see there's a lot extra clicks I have to do in here. So new query, and this is a text search. I'll type in fish. I can do selected items, but I've only two limits here, and you can see that with the specials, yeah, they're pretty substantial, except for the two that are missing in the compound query. But I was wrong there. That is actually okay. This is the one that's missing though. I can stem it, but that's all I can do. I can run my query, but I have no option to spread the fines. So there's how again. It doesn't tell me. There's no counter down the bottom here to tell me how many items are in a folder, the way there is in Windows. That's not on my list, by the way. But when you look in a folder in Windows, there's a counter. It just tells you how many items are in there, and it's handy when you're running queries because it tells you. It told me there was 210 references in Windows. I've no idea how many I have here, unless I save it as a code. So let's say I want to save it as a code. So I'll save my results. I'll call it fish. No option to merge it into an existing code or spread the fines. I've just got the word fish. So I save my results. I'll actually do that again because I just manually merge it. No, actually, I need to do that again. Hang on, I left out a click there that I should have done. I should have merged it. Oh, sorry, I can't merge it. That's the point. Sorry, I'm senior moment. So in the query results folder, there's my fish. I could have placed it as a child code under the fishing one and then manually merged it. So I'm just going to copy and paste it as a code now. So I go back up to my codes. I go to my, I think it was around the economy. There, something about the fishing industry decline. Yeah, there it is. So fish. So I'll paste it there. I can't merge it, but I can paste it. But remember, the context is still not spread. So when I go in now, there's my fish code. When I open it up, you'll see that there's just the word fish. There's another, I think it's a bug that I'm going to show you here as well. So what I have to do now to get my paragraphs is I have to do Command A on my keyboard to select everything. I'm on a Windows keyboard here, so I just manually select all the way down. But I can do Command A and it selects everything. Okay. Now, when I do, I can now do, because I've selected them, I can do Command A and just select everything in the code. It doesn't break it into sections the way it does in Windows. So if it's a big code in Windows, I think there's more than 100 references, it breaks it into sections so it loads faster. Now I can do my spread. I can spread my coding and I can do a broad context, and it will do it for the ones that I've highlighted. Now the bug I mentioned, you see it there, I didn't highlight those ones on top, but it did it for the ones that I had selected. The problem is when you do Command A on the Mac and you select it all, and then you go down about 20, 30, 40 codes, they're still not selected, they're still not spread down here. You have to keep going down the code, keep selecting until you've come to the end of the code. Now that's not supposed to happen. You're supposed to do Command A and select everything in the code, but it does select them, but it doesn't spread the fines only for a certain number of them. That's actually not on our list there as well, but that's just another thing. So now I've got my find. Now I have to manually copy it because I can't cut it. Go up to my fishing industry, and then I can merge it. It will merge. I get it. Doesn't give you the warning about merging the memos. And then finally, I can go in and delete it. So you can see how much more clicking that is, and how, from a training point of view, it's a lot more showing people what to do than the way it is on Windows. It's a much faster, slicker operation on Windows. So that's 14 and 15 on our list. I'm just going to go back to my memo. Option to cut missing, that's included there in that piece as well. No option to zoom a transcript. You see how, on Windows I can just put the mouse in here, hold my control key and zoom it up and down. I have no option to do that on the Mac. So it depends on the size of my monitor and the size of the text in the document. But on Windows I can just do that, or there's a zoom bar down the bottom, lets me zoom up and down the document. I can't do that on a Mac. So option to chart a matrix results. So I'm just going to go down here to a matrix result for a minute. We'll open it up. On Windows there's a little tab on the side that lets me produce a chart of this. On the Mac, none. I can export it by going, it doesn't say export, which would be helpful. And I can export it as a spreadsheet, but that becomes a CSV file. I then have to convert that into Excel. On Windows, I just right click, export, and it puts it straight into the Excel table. Again, it's just a lot more clicking, and I'm making files I don't necessarily need, but it's easier to do the graphics and things if you're going to make graphics out of your table, or to use the standard Excel file rather than a CSV file. So that's another feature that's a problem. It's part of the matrix, and it does have the matrix, as you can see, but it doesn't have all the features. Oh, by the way, there's no transpose either on the matrix. Can't transpose it. On Windows, I can just right click and reverse the order of the rows and columns. I can't do that on the Mac either. No text, video, audio, data set view in codes as there are in Windows. Now, that's really annoying, because one of the things we do in all of those other ones I've just listed, 14, 15, 16 and 17, I would say they're all high priority, because they're all really irritating things. So if I open up a code, and we do, the economy. On Windows, I have, the tabs are at the top, which is probably easier. I have summary and reference, that's all I have. Now on the Mac, I have a text view, which gives me each individual case and what was coded to that code. So in-case and cross-case analysis becomes easier. And I also have PDF, and if I have video or audio coded, I'll have a tab for those as well. All I get in here is a link back to the source file if it's a video. So big difference there, because what we do is on the text search in our workshop, we get them to text search PDFs to search actually literature, because that's what they're more likely to use it for. Update a code, and then we can show them that I can click on one view and I can see, the lived experience, the primary data, and then I can just click on another tab and I can see a list of all the authors who have written about this and the relevant passages. We can't demonstrate that on a Mac, and it's just not as easy to see it or to find it. It's all just dumped into one code. There's none of these tabs, the separators, that are useful. The only one you have is the summary one. That's all you have. So that's another issue that is very irritating. No transpose option, I've covered that. So now, some of these are just for the features are different. Can I find the context of a query? I've covered that. Control A does not select all the text. I have that actually in there. After you spread for context, I've done that. There are 2 and 3 find, 2 of the 5 find options available in Windows, possible Mac. Number 14 above. Okay, we've covered that as well. Cannot merge, we've covered that. Coding, 17 above, missing completely. Code selection at existing codes or case, we've done that. Requires browsing. Oh yeah, there's a lovely little pop-up window on Windows. If I go back into Windows here for a second and I just highlight a passage of text that I want to code, just get this option here, code selection. So if you have a lot of codes, there's all your codes in a nice window. You just have to hold your control key and you can put it into several at the same time, which is not unusual at the beginning of a project, that the same text will go to several codes. That's really slick and fast. Now when I try to do the same thing on a Mac, when I highlight the text and I do code selection, I can do existing or new, but if I want to do it to an existing one, there's no pop-up window. I have to go browsing. I have to go down into the subfolders, and then I have to expand, and then I can select. I don't think there's even a select all. Oh, there is here. Yeah, I can do that all right. But if I only want certain ones or top level ones, then I have to go in and manually select them, which I do. Which I can do. You can see that would be much easier to do. It's not that difficult to do on a Mac. They don't seem to complain about it that much because they've never had the little pop-up window. But the pop-up window is much better. Now, the code panel does give you something similar, but there's limitations to what you can do on the code panel as well. I'm not sure you can even make a new code on the code panel. Drag select content into the panel. I'm not sure Let me just check. No, you can't. You can't make a new code, so it's kind of pretty. You can in the pop-up window on Windows. You must have no export list view directly. Oh yeah, this is a real bugbear. There is a code book, but on Windows, if I in list view, so I want to export this view or some of these codes, either to make better graphics than NVivo makes, which wouldn't be hard in Excel. All I have to do on Windows is let's go to the list view here. is export list, and that puts it straight into Excel where I can tidy it up, make it nicer for presentation purposes, and they're also collapsed in Excel. So I can have 1, 2, or 3 levels of codes, and I can expand just one group of codes in Excel if I want. None of that exists on the Mac. I can export a code book, but that doesn't collapse them, so it just gives me everything. And I might, like, when you're going in an audit trail from codes to categories to themes, you might show all your codes for phase 1, then the collapsed categories in phase 2, and then the defined and named themes in phase 3. So all you're doing is dumping it into Excel and making a nice table. You can't do that here. The code book just gives you one option. That's it. All collapsed. So no option there. And that would be a feature that a lot of people, they don't realize it's there, but in the workshops when we tell them, it's used a lot. We know from our own, because we give post-training support to people, we know how much they rely on that one. So that would be useful in sorry, back into Mac. That would be useful on a Mac because you don't have it. Where's my memos gone? I'm in the Mac here. Sorry, I close that. No export list view directly. Yeah, that's it. That's a useful one. That would be a priority for me. Memos. Now the memo bug has been fixed, and that's been addressed, I think, in an update. But the AI one I talked about the other day has not been fixed, and that's a pretty serious one given the interest that there is out there in AI at the moment. So no sets possible in the matrix, only AND operator on Mac, where there are 5 addition operators available on a matrix in Windows. No filtering of rows and columns. You can't filter a row or column on a matrix, so it's very, very basic on the Mac. And if you have a big matrix, you might want to filter out everything at 0, or filter out everything to do with, 0 is a good one because, for rows or columns, you can just filter out everything and it only shows you ones above 0. Can't do that on a Mac. No direct export to Excel, no option to move or hide columns. Yeah, there's another one that, on Windows, I'll just show you the difference here. On Windows, if I'm in list view, I can go to the workspace column up here, workspace, customize, and I can move, I get rid of my descriptors, I can move things in or out or change the order of the columns. Now, that's really useful for simplifying your screen. I'm meeting my supervisor. I don't want to show her the created on, modified on columns because I was there till 12 o'clock last night and I told her to have it done 2 weeks ago. So the ability to customize these things is very helpful, and it's very easy to do on Windows. There's no option to hide a column on the Mac. You can change the order. You can drag things back and forth, or you can squeeze them together like that. Only up to a point, and then they'll be expanded the next time you open up list view anyway. So that would be a high priority for me as well, because list view is such an important part of reviewing your coding and the levels of coding and whether you have a memo written or not. By the way, the linked memo, it used to be a little icon of a memo. I'm not sure that link really works. It just tells you it's linked to something. I would prefer an icon there, definitely, for a memo, that like you used to have. Now, a coding comparison query, no option to show percentages as there are in Windows, and no option to switch from weighted to unweighted in the version. I think that's actually just a problem. That's just a bug. You can switch on the Mac. There is an option to switch between weighted and unweighted in a coding comparison query. But in version 14 anyway, I reported that it just doesn't work. It doesn't change when you click on it. So that's something you might investigate, because it is useful to be able to switch between weighted. An option to line by line show the coding file and kappa score as there are in Windows. I'm not sure that's actually correct. I might just run one of those coding comparison queries. I just want to see if that's up to date, if that's actually the case. So we'll run it. There's nicer features here like sentence and paragraph and character. You don't have that on Windows, so that's one up for the Mac. There's my codes now. Sentences, paragraphs. No, it's just about which way it's going to run it. So let me run that again. There is percentages there, so you can scrap that one. There is percentages there. I don't use this very much myself, because if we are running coding comparison queries, it's nearly always in Windows. It's just from making videos and stuff on it, so I'm not as familiar with this as I probably should be. Yeah. I drill down on that. Yeah, I can drill down on it, and I can see, and it has the coding stripes thing here on the right as well. So ignore that one with the coding comparison query. I was just plain wrong on that one. Sorry, I'll go back into Windows. No, I'll go back to my Mac. Okay, that's the coding comparison. So you can scrub that whole piece. Well, apart from the weighted and non-weighted, I didn't check that, but let me just do that again, just to check that. The other two you can ignore. Let me just run that again. Unweighted. Overall unweighted kappa. There should be an option there. At least there used to be an option for toggling between weighted and unweighted. So maybe they've done away with that. I don't know, I'm missing something here in the settings. Codes, yeah, I think... well, you might just look into that. I don't know if they've just purposely removed it because it wasn't working, or if I'm doing something wrong there. But there used to be an option that you could very simply click between weighted and unweighted in terms of the scores, you know, the kappa score. So that's one you might want to just check out, but I'm not sure if I'm off the charts on that one or not. Word frequency search, no option to export results direct to Excel. It's very useful when you do, if you're doing that kind of content analysis. I've just brought in a Twitter feed. Here's a discussion, and here's the keywords used and the frequencies. Now I just want to put that into a nice pretty table. Again, I'm back to the whole Excel, CSV and all of that. I can't just put it straight into Excel the way I can in Windows. A word results to a code. Yeah, you can't just... so on Windows, if you run a coding a word frequency search, you can just right click on any word and make a code out of it. Or you can run it as a text search if you want to spread the finds. You do have the option of a text search, but you don't have the option to just make a code out of the word. AI assist, I just put that in at the option, no option to spread for context. So I don't know if I showed you that or not when we had the meeting, but if I go back up here too, we'll just go to an interview. Oh yeah, it's codes I want to spread. Sorry, I'm going to the codes here. We're getting all sorts of errors on this as well. I'm going to go to real estate development here. It's quite a big code, but actually I'll use infrastructure because that's I'll be here all day waiting for me. It won't code that number of codes anyway. I can tell you that it won't code all that data. If I do AI, I have to log in. I'm not logged in. Hang on. I think I sent you a screenshot of that. I might be wasting our time here. Everything's reversed on a Windows keyboard when you're typing on a Mac. I'll just do the Gmail one. I think that's the one my AI account is on. So it'll be... No, I probably typed that wrong, did I? Okay, so AI. suggest child codes. I have to do this, that's okay, no problem with that. It does work. So we'll just close that, terms and conditions, and go back into NVivo. Say okay to that. And this is what I get. But you can see down the bottom here on Windows, there's an option in Windows. I'll just show you on Windows in case you're not familiar with this issue. So if I do the same thing here, suggest child codes. Now, you see down the bottom here, I have the option to spread all these different contexts. I don't get that on the Mac. So I can take, give me a broad context on that search, and then it generates them, and that all works fine on Windows. You get your codes, and it does it does a good job. Doesn't always code everything, but you know, you could run it twice if you needed to. But on the Mac, no option. So if I generate the codes now, so this is what it's saying. You can take a note of those reference numbers there now. So let's say I'm going to keep all of those, and it does give me the preview of what it's going to put in and everything. Now when I say OK, I get my codes. Oh, I get that error. Sometimes I get the codes, sometimes I get the error. And the problem is, when it does code, it'll be one source, and it'll be a much smaller number of references than it showed in the preview. So that's still a problem, and a pretty serious one on the Mac. So that's it. I'm sorry for making this thing so long, but I want to make sure I covered everything extensively in the video. And I know you may not be that familiar with the Windows version of NVivo. You may be, I'm not sure, but I just wanted to show you the features visually so you can actually see and explain in terms of their priority and what would be more or less important from my point of view anyway as a trainer. In terms of it is anecdotal. But I just to reiterate the point, I know that they use a lot of matrix in where clients share their activities, but that's not always a good guide as to whether something's working well or not. In fact, the fact that it's not being used might be an indicator that it's not that relevant, or it could be an indicator that it's relevant but no one can use it. So that's it. I'll post this to you now, and I'll get a summary as well. Sorry for making it so long-winded, Frederick, so we'll end it there.